I'm Ibu Robin Lim, and I'm here to share with you. I'm really excited, and this is a really special moment for me to share with this particular group of Indigenous birth keepers and birth keepers from all over the world that have joined us. Um, I have Kim here, who I've known since she was not yet conceived. I met her mother uh, about 10 minutes after her mother met her father. So, um, and she was a breech baby and a twin, and she's here now helping us, especially with media support. I read something interesting this morning that was shared from Every Mother Counts, and Every Mother Counts has been an incredible resource for Bumi Sehat. Bumi is the Earth Mother, and Sehat is healthy, so we're a Healthy Mother Earth Foundation. So today I read this from Every Mother Counts. Today in the United States, a woman is twice as likely to die from complications of pregnancy and childbirth than her mother was a generation ago. And shockingly, Black and Indigenous women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die than white women. So this is something I take very personally, since my own younger sister died at the age of 32 in the United States with insurance under the care of an OBGYN. She couldn't get the care that she needed, the simple care that she needed for having extreme hypertension in pregnancy. So this has become my response to that, is that I became a birth keeper. I was very happy being poet in the schools in Maui County, Hawaii. And then I realized I had to go back to school and become a midwife so that I could really advocate for the rights of our women. So today, Rhonda was really beautiful. Thank you, Rhonda, for asking me to do this. And thank you for all the Center for Indigenous Midwifery people, the women who are part of that beautiful group. I feel like this incredible pride to be included with all of us together. Uh, but it was really special for you to ask me. Rhonda got to work with our team in the disaster zone after Hurricane Haiyan in the Philippines. And some of our Filipino midwives and birth keepers are online now, I believe, with us. At least they let me know they were coming on. So one of the things that we have to talk about as women serving our Indigenous communities, we have to think about the fact that this is a time of climate crisis. It's no longer climate change, it's climate crisis, and we're in global pandemic. But I believe that my maternal grandmother, she taught me to keep it simple. And I believe that our ancestral sacred feminine ways and skills are the viable solutions for today's challenges. And that honestly, everyone that's here on this Zoom meeting, we're part of the solution: working, healing, staying human, supporting each other through this, which has become a mess on Earth. But we're here and we're doing our work, and it's always the same work. It's the same holding of that sacred space for women and for babies and for families. Um, we've inherited the colonization of our food, the colonization of everything, the colonization of our shelter. The rice in Indonesia and the Philippines is the Green Revolution high yield rice. Um, it was developed by American scientists to end hunger, and so the indigenous rice that our people always ate was taken away. And the immediate effect felt in Bali was that within one season, the women began to bleed to death in childbirth. I know this is a disturbing slide, and many midwives across the world, and especially OBGYNs, have said to me, well, we don't use that table anymore. We have a really nice pink one, or ours. But if you cover that in pink, that torture table, it's still a torture table. Uh, so I don't care how it looks now. These OB tables are terrible, in my opinion, and nobody wants to give birth on that. And no other mammal does what we do to the women in terms of making them really lay down on torture tables. I can't understand it. I'll never understand it, and I'll do everything I can. Right now in the Philippines, we don't use these tables. However, we're required to have one, and we're required to pretend we use it, because the women can't avail themselves to the PhilHealth helping, the money that makes it so that birth centers can stay open and that Filipino midwives can collect from the government. They have to agree that they're forcing the women to give birth on an OB table. Now, of course, we don't do that. None of our teams do that over there, but there, I want to change that in my lifetime. That's one of the things I absolutely will do is I will advocate for the change and legislate for the change in that rule. So this is my grandmother, Vicenta Munar Lim. Um, she survived World War I and World War II. Her mother was actually a licensed, my great grandmother, my great Lola, was a licensed midwife trained medically. And during the war, there was no way when, you know, between World War I and World War II, the strife never stopped, as we know, all over the world, really. And so my own grandmother had no education in a formal way, but she was by her mother's side, receiving babies. Um, Before modern medicine was available in most parts of the Philippines, she was in the high mountains. Um, During World War II, there was no available way to transport anyone to a hospital. The hospitals were actually carpet bombed, and yet here she was doing this work. I'm really proud to be her granddaughter. They say she put an anting in my heart, and that's some kind of an amulet. It could be a part of a shell or a piece of sand, but it's something that's meant to irritate the receiver. It's meant to irritate me so that any injustice will constantly uh, keep me working and keep me doing something about it. So she made me a birth keeper in her own tradition, and she's pretty amazing part of my life. Even now, she still guides me. And I wanted to share my mother. Also, my mother, Crescentia, she's actually half Chamorro, which is a wandering island people from Micronesia, and then her Filipino mother. Uh, then my my daughter Eliana, who's actually Sumbanese. I got her for free. And then my granddaughter, who's half Balinese. And our family is really blessed because we live in 4 generations of people here in our home. So, and in a small village, so we have the benefit of constantly sharing our ilmu, which ilmu is the spiritual authority to do the work we do. I feel like a very blessed human being here. Even though my people were very displaced, and I didn't get to grow up as much in my mother's tradition as I would have liked to, but to a certain extent, yes, I did. And she's here with us now. My mother's 88 years old. Okay. I'm dedicating today's talk to midwife Faria Salman. It's hard for me to talk about Farida because in February she was actually living in our home. She was here from Papua. She's Papuan, and she was here on taking seminars in gentle childbirth, helping to teach and share with the midwives here in Bali. We had our midwife, one of our midwives from Aceh here. It was a gathering of our sort of clan, because in Indonesia we have 4 Bumi Sehat clinics. Wada Philippines has one in the area where Rhonda worked, and that's um, the island of Leyte in Dulag. Dulag rhymes with gulag for a reason, we always say, in the disaster zone. And then we have one that's about to open any moment. We're waiting for some bureaucracy to clear, but we're opening in Palawan. The indigenous mothers there gave us 2 hectares of land, and it's a beautiful place. It's really going to be incredible. Farida was taken by COVID, and this is a beautiful photo of her going out to one of the little tiny islands, Kampung Ayapo, on Lake Sentani in Papua, where there's absolutely no access to any kind of care for the people there. And so the mothers would look forward to her coming out by boat and doing their prenatal care and their postpartum care. Of course, if she was around, the births could happen with her there. If the birth was happening and they called our center in Papua, the Angel Hiromi Bumi Sehat Childbirth Clinic, then someone would rush out, jump on a boat, drive like about 30 minutes, jump on a boat for another 30 minutes and try to get there on time. But otherwise, women would often come and stay with us at the end of their pregnancy with their families so that they could deliver safely, because very high maternal and infant mortality rate on those little islands. Okay. The Papuan midwives have, The Papuans are Australasians, so they have they have a very indigenous. Many of them are very black and curly haired, and it seems like the COVID is affecting them in a much more profound way, as we're finding many indigenous peoples all over the world are being profoundly affected by COVID. The disparities are shocking. That's we feel like, of course, Farida. She also had falciparum malaria, a history of that, so that was probably her comorbidity, and that's why we lost her. Look at these Papuan midwives wearing rain jackets and rain pants, plastic. Papua, it is so hot there, it makes Bali feel air conditioned, and yet they wanted to serve their community so badly that they would not um, stop serving because they didn't have PPEs. The government said, well, you can close the birth center until we can get PPEs. They were just not available. But so here they are. They said, that's okay, we'll wear rain gear. And for many weeks, they wore rain gear in order to be able to continue to serve their communities. So I'm very proud of our Papuan midwives. We have 4 Papuan midwives who have now recovered from COVID. Of course, we lost Farida and 2 of our board members. They also died. Um, so at this point, uh, we are building an isolation birth room because so many of our mothers test positive or reactive to the COVID-19 rapid test when they come into labor. It's a regulation in this country that all laboring mothers have to take a rapid test. And and what happens is then they are forcibly moved to a government hospital to give birth, where they're treated very poorly. It's really shocking, the treatment that they get there. So the Papuan women have asked to please have an isolation room on our clinic site so that they can give birth at the birth center with our midwives. And our midwives are happy to help the COVID positive moms. They feel protected because they've recovered. So that money came through just a few days ago from Every Mother Counts. So we are starting to break ground on a special isolation birth room, which is so exciting for Papua. This is Okinawan midwives and doulas at a traditional birth center in Okinawa. I was actually conceived in Okinawa, so it was really special for me last year to travel there, and we did a blessing way for our friend Akiko-san, who was facing childbirth. She was excited about it and frightened, and also because she was already in her 40s, she was really afraid. It was really nice to see how her circle of support, her sisters, really could help her to be ready for her birth. She was really ecstatic after that. Okay, this is Anaka Gumas. I just want to share her with you because she was born in 1951. She worked for so many decades in a small shack where the government placed her in Karangasam on the dry side of the island. There's no possibility of transport. It was during the time when hemorrhage in childbirth was the leading cause of death in Bali. When you think about hemorrhage in childbirth being the leading cause of death in Bali, that's like, it's shocking because all over the world, we have women actually dying in the prime of their lives. They're not sick, they're not elderly. They're dying in the prime of their lives having a baby. And that's where we come in. That's where our ilmu, our skills, our spiritual authority to be women helping women in our own communities comes in. But I love Ibu Gungmas. It's hard to believe that she's as old as she is because she always looks like she's just so beautiful when she arrives. And she wants the women that she's caring for to know that she dressed up and got herself really pretty for them. She says, I don't have to get dressed up and pretty for my husband. I need to do it for my women that I look after. So really admire her. Um, these are just some mothers and babies who actually were so afraid of COVID that they were wearing masks around their own babies. And of course, we support them in anything that they're feeling. We do not feel like women need to wear masks in labor. This is something that a lot of mothers say that they have to do in the hospital, and it's very difficult. I have my mask here. Um, it's a very difficult time, and everybody has an opinion about a mask, but I will say that our moms are not forced to wear them in labor at all. And oftentimes the fathers will or may not wear them. It depends, but all of us, always our midwives are fully dressed in PEP with the plastic and the mask and the hazmat suit and the head covering and everything. And we've found that love and kindness come through. It doesn't matter. You know, even if your face, your smile is covered, your eyes can smile. Your touch can be just just as beautiful and respectful as if you didn't have a mask on. So this is Karek Sri. She's one of our young midwives, and she's helping Dayu to deal with postpartum challenges. Dayu lives most of her life in her wheelchair, and she has had her first baby. And her community of people with special needs, they have no income right now because of the COVID. There's no one to buy their handicrafts, but we can at least support her in many ways. This is a single mother who is a midwife. Her name's Irma. She was on scholarship through the Bumi Sehat Scholarship Fund to support our midwives from indigenous communities who have a dream that want to be a midwife. That is her mother, Ibu Rika, and that's her first baby. They are very proud Sumbanese people. Sumba has a terribly high maternal mortality rate. Now, midwife Irma and her baby, who's I think 9 months old now, they're in Sumba, and I'm hoping that she'll soon be working in a government clinic there, bringing gentle childbirth to her own people. Okay, this is Sasak, a Sasak midwife in Lombok, in the aftermath of that horrible earthquakes in 2018. I mean, those earthquakes were so big they broke down homes and businesses here in Bali, and that was on our neighbor island. We have a beautiful team out there, and Direct Relief has now paid for the building of a proper clinic. But this is sort of typical of the homes that our mothers are living in, and that our midwives are happy to go out and serve them in their homes. They don't have transportation often to come to. We were operating out of tents for our clinic for the first 2 years, but now we're in a proper clinic. But again, we can't assume that these women have any transportation. I love this photo. This is Lorena. She's a Filipino midwife, actually from the island of Camote. She survived the Super Typhoon Haiyan, and she's here receiving a baby in a tent. And that's just that moment where the midwife holds the baby and gives the mother a, what do they call it, a pregnant pause, so that she can reach for the baby and bring the baby to her own heart, because that's so empowering for the mother to reach for her own baby. We found that in the disaster zones, which are the most high risk, low resource settings in the world, that our traditional midwifery practices, which of course are culturally appropriate, kindness, respect, love, those are all part of our medicine. That's all part of our medicine bag. Singing the songs of the culture of the woman and her family. Having, you know, for the Muslim woman, having prayer rugs available so that she feels happy to pray if she wants to pray. And guess what? When you pray like a Muslim, your breech baby turns head down. And anyway, in these high risk, low resource settings, we are having better outcomes, far better outcomes by our statistics than the national statistics in better, of course, in better settings with more resources. So this is where we can really trust our indigenous knowledge, because it's working. It's working all over the world. I love this photo. The mother gave permission. She says, oh, they can't see who I am. But in the aftermath of disasters, and also during this pandemic, for example, in the Philippines, in 2 months, we had 14 breech babies. During the volcano's eruption in Bali, we had 14 breech babies in 7 weeks. Some of them we transported because there were other complications, but most of them were born, half of them were born normally. A lot of very short cords. So during this time of strife on earth, let's remind our mothers to, when, for example, we find that if they eat citrus fruit and they open the peel and they eat the white part and the little strings inside the oranges, that's pectin and it grows long cords. So the research from Australia is showing that in times of strife, very short cords. So whether the babies are head down or head up, we want long cords. So let's have our mothers eat that inside of the peel. They don't have to eat the whole orange peel. They just eat a bit of the white part if they can do that every day and get all that vitamin C from the oranges and the pectin as well. Our grandmothers knew how to receive breech babies into the world. We know how to receive breech babies into the world. The regulations are telling us that we have to send them to the hospital for a cesarean. And, I like to call cesareans belly births because many, many, many people are having them. And if they're a necessary belly birth, it's such a blessing. Um, and I don't want any mothers out there to feel badly about themselves because they had a belly birth. They went to the furthest edge of science to do what was needed to be done for their babies. And I just want to thank every mother, no matter how her birth unfolded. I do feel like it is a shame and a hardship that so many breech mothers are afraid to go to the hospital because they'll be forced to have a cesarean. Just a couple, well, it's about 4 nights ago now, I got a wake up call at 3 in the morning, and the midwives were telling me to run as fast as I could to the clinic, which is very close. Bumi said it's very close to my house, and we had a breech baby. The mother arrived with the breech ready to push, and it was a beautiful birth. The baby was smiling immediately after. She kept smiling when she heard our voices. Okay, I share this with you because I love Sapana. Her name means dream, and she gave us permission to use her photo. She lost her entire family during the big earthquakes in Nepal, and I believe that was 2015. And her husband actually worked on a cruise ship, and they would not allow him to come home and cremate the dead. She had to take all the responsibility. This was her second baby, and she didn't feel she could love another baby. She felt like she had no love left in her. And with the kindness that we gave her during this birth in the tent, she reached for him and she said, "Are you mine?" And she fell in love with him before he was actually all the way out of her body. He was only halfway out of her body. I feel like this is the power of kindness, and how much the Nepalese midwives and birth keepers were able to support her in a way. And then she asked me to receive her baby, so I was honored to be there to receive her baby into the world. This is Sabita. She's holding beautiful twins. She lost so much during the earthquakes that destroyed her country. This was a pair of twins that was born to a mother named Devi, who was 16 years old, and Sabita was there. She was my interpreter. She was also a paramedic, and she shared with us that her dream was to become a midwife. And so through my social media friends, we were able to raise the money for her to take her 3-year midwifery training, because I felt like Sabita was born to be a birth keeper. She had a calling. She had a great grandmother that she knew was a traditional midwife, and she needed her piece of paper, her license. And this is where we can really help each other. If we can help these young birth keepers get the paper that they need so that they can do the work that they know is in their heart and in their hands. Sabita is now handling 25 births a month or more by herself. And she recently recovered from the COVID. This is providing healthy food for pregnant mothers and postpartum mothers in Bali, where the unemployment rate because of the pandemic is 80% or more. And we just have this opportunity to live with empathy, and I feel like it's really special. This is some of our elders in our village and surrounding villages who we do health checks on, and daily we bring them a lunch meal, because the elders, if they know there's not enough money for food, there's not enough, they will not eat. They will make sure that the grandchildren and the great grandchildren have food first, and especially the pregnant mothers. The elders always look after the pregnant women. This is just part of our providing basic foods: sweet potatoes, rice. I wish that was red rice, but the rice that was donated is white. That so that our different communities, families who live at the top of the volcano, they lost their farms during the eruptions, the HIV positive mothers and children, and also just there's about 200 indigent families that haven't got food unless we provide every week or two basic food supplies. This is our Eka Yuliani. She's our executive director at Bumi Sehat Bali, and she's just in a remote village making sure to mitigate suffering by bringing foods to people who don't have any. Fortunately, everyone's revived their village gardens. So we see, because no one's going to work, Without a tourist industry, there's very few jobs, but people are in the gardens and growing vegetables. This is a mother whose mother and her husband were present at her birth. She was really excited to be able to have her baby with her closest people beside her. And there's also lots of evidence, and everyone can Google this, that breast milk has never been found to contain live coronavirus. So we know that breastfeeding is a superpower. The more we support it, the better off our families are. There was recently 2,700 mothers in Holland who recovered from COVID that are breastfeeding, and they're finding that every single one of them has antibodies to the virus in her breast milk. So here's an indigenous wisdom, breastfeeding being a superpower and the best way we can feed our children. I love this photo of Rati, and I share it because she suffered a 4th-degree tear. A lot of malnourished women have big tears here, no matter how much you slow down the birth, no matter what you do. Again, they're not eating their indigenous red rice. They're eating the white rice that was introduced by American scientists, which is high yield. You get 3 crops a year instead of 2. It also changed the culture in that the Balinese calendar was based on a 2-crop-a-year system, so that everybody was sharing water from the top of the mountains to the rice fields down by the ocean. And yet somehow the people have been able to find a new balance, but it's difficult to find balance when your entire culture was affected by your staple food being changed. This mother had a 4th-degree tear, and here she is breastfeeding her baby right after having been sutured with, she was during the 4th-degree tear suturing, she was breastfeeding. She was so brave and so excited and positive and happy to have her baby skin to skin that she didn't care that she was getting a big suture job done on her. And this is a couple that's displaced from Java. They're living in a it's hard to call it a home, the place where they live, where they share with many people, but they don't have any work. So, but they do have the free childbirth services and health services at Bumi Sehat, and they have a beautiful baby girl. This is Abuela Maria, and also Safira, who's my assistant and a beautiful doula. And she's Javanese and lives in Bali. And we are working day and night to encapsulate and distribute, mostly for free, these Sambiroto capsules. It's Andrographix paniculata. It's a heritage herb of Indonesia and the Philippines. It's used in Ayurveda. It's used in Chinese medicine. But it has been found by virologists and herbologists to be the #1 herb for stopping the particular coronavirus that we're dealing with now. So we have actually cured numerous people. We actually were able to get it to a friend in Tokyo whose husband was on a respirator for 33 days and died. And she was nearly calling for the ambulance 5 or 6 times a day because she could not breathe. And we were able to get someone flying to Tokyo to bring it to her doorway and leave it. Within 48 hours of taking 6 grams a day of these capsules, she was absolutely cured. So we're using it at Sangla Hospital now on COVID patients. They're doing a study there. But I just wanted to say that our grandmother's way, all of you that are out there gathering your herbs and growing your herbs and wildcrafting them, those plants are sharing their ojas. They take the energy. We all know this. The plants bring the energy from the rain and the sun and the moon and the wind and the earth mother, and they put it in a form that we can ingest and that we can be nourished and we can be healed. So keep doing that work. This is Mama Claudia. I just wanted to honor her because of her dedication. We lost her in February. She died of cancer. She was a human rights attorney and judge, and she decided that the only way that she could defend the Black and the Indigenous mothers and babies was to go back to school. She became a doula, then she became a midwife, and she fought this beautiful lifelong battle with her biggest tool being love. Love was her weapon. And she was pretty kick-ass. She worked with us in the Philippines and in Bali. And one of our Balinese batik artists made this this banner for the Midwives of Color. And I just love this picture. We're not carrying for 9 months, and struggling during labor for 9 hours just for you to kneel on our baby's necks for 9 minutes. So, yeah, the voices of the mothers need to be heard. You know, there are many mothers, but we have one voice. This is an altar on the big island of Hawaii for the sacred feminine, to Pele. She's our volcano goddess, and she's very much alive. In fact, she's erupting again right now. I've asked everyone out there who, especially the birth keepers, because we're carrying a big load, we're frontliners during this time, and we all have unique challenges. It's like we're all on the one big stormy sea, and we all are on our little boats. And some of us are very alone, and some of us have families. I'm fortunate because I have an extended family here, and we all live together. We take precautions, but we're, you know, knock on wood, we've been healthy. And I ask all of you to write yourself a letter if you haven't already done this. And this time of self-reinvention, this time of the Mother Earth going through so much and humanity going through so much, I started writing myself this letter, I think it was at the end of last February or the beginning of March, and I'm going to wait 9 months to open it. And what I found was my muse, my ability to put poetry down, to take my heart and my feelings and put it down in poetry, was reawoken by this process of writing myself a letter. To see how I would be changed, and each of you, how you will change and how you will grow during this time of strife. So that's my invitation to you, to just write yourself a letter. This is a Maori birth keeper, Takaha. He's from Aotearoa, which some people call New Zealand. We call it Aotearoa. He's sharing with Wayan Mowgli and Wayan's mother and his 2 daughters. He now has a 3rd daughter. But both this Balinese man and this Maori man, they don't say my wife is pregnant or my partner's pregnant, because they believe that the baby's listening. And if the man says my wife or my partner's pregnant, then he's not committed. The baby thinks this man is not committed to me. A committed, promised father will say, we are pregnant. We are expecting a baby. And so the message of this beautiful Balinese man and this beautiful Maori man is that remember that our babies are listening. And it's from their traditions they're sending us this message. These are Dukunbai, traditional midwives of Aceh. There were in Aceh, in the hardest hit area, in where we came in after the tsunami in 2004. We were there within a couple of weeks. We got there 3 weeks before the Red Cross. And there were 154 traditional midwives and government licensed midwives all working together. After the tsunami, there were 32 left. And these traditional midwives all have hand phones with hand crank because there was no electricity for so many years there, but they have hand cranks so that they can charge up their phones. And they could call the Bumisehat midwives at any time and say, look, we have a mother in labor. She wants to give birth where she's staying at home. And remember, home was it was mostly tents and even just a tarp to protect a little bit from the rain. And it's really rainy and windy in Aceh. But the mothers often now, especially now that they have rebuilt their homes, they want to give birth at home. And the traditional mother midwives, the Dukunbai, can ask for one or more of the midwives from Bumisehat to come. They'll park the ambulance way far away, but within reach, so the mother doesn't see the ambulance, because sometimes seeing the ambulance or even seeing the oxygen tank or even seeing the midwife's instruments can be disturbing. So we want to have an undisturbed birth. But these women knew that they could have the younger licensed midwives to call upon in case they needed some medical help. But they've always been honored and so respected and listened to. And that's such a special thing about Acehnese culture. You know, the Acehnese don't ever say they're Indonesian. They don't even say they're Sumatran. They're Acehnese. They're a separate, unique culture. This is the traditional birth attendants, the Dukunbai in Aceh, teaching the younger midwives how to burn the umbilical cord. It's a safe, if you do it properly, it's a safe protocol. Remember, in the disaster zones, you won't have any access to any kind of sterilization. You won't even have a stove to boil water on. So in order to safely sever the cord, if you want to do it, you have to go back to an indigenous way using fire, which actually cauterizes. And it's an ancient method, um, very indigenous to this area of the world. And remember that when knives were starting to be used and scissors, they were rusty and babies died of tetanus toxoid. So this is a special thing for me is to see the elder traditional Dukunbai teaching the young licensed midwives. This was Haiti. Haiti's Haiti's birth traditions were totally colonized. The women struggle. This is after the big 2010 earthquakes. Uh, and so the Haitian women really do struggle to, they're trying to take back their culture of birth, but it's very difficult. This is the Rohingya women. Last year, I traveled with Budi Astuti, who's a Lombok midwife, Lombok, Indonesia, who's our director of medicine there. Budi and I went and we were able to work with the Bangladesh midwives, and we were able to go to the Rohingya camp where almost 1 million people are living under tarps. And this is the Hope Field Hospital. Each of these women had heartbreaking, unbelievable stories of genocide. Well, they were believable because, of course, they were true. They were almost unspeakable. I try not to think about what was done to them and how the genocide, and they're really trying to keep their culture and their honor, but it's very difficult. This is baby Komang Bumi. He was born at Bumi Sehat. He's a third child, so he's a Komang. And this is the day he gets to touch the Mother Earth for the first time. It's his Yamutan, or his 3-month ceremony. It's the biggest upachara or ceremony of his life because one's relationship with the Earth Mother is the most important relationship of your life. And this is why we always need to honor our mother whose womb we were born from. Because as we love our mother, we will love our Earth Mother. And so by honoring the Earth Mother, by honoring our own mothers, and by protecting children from trauma at birth, we are really saving the earth, as Janine Parvati would say. Mother, gentle birth protects Mother Earth or saves Mother Earth. This is my own daughter, Zoe. I'm sharing her with you right now because she had a VBAC at home. She climbed her Everest, I say, with our family, in her sister's home in Texas. Baby Joanna's umbilical cord was tightly wrapped around her neck 5 times. If anyone had seen that in an ultrasound, there is no way that my daughter would have been encouraged to have her baby in our traditional family way. So it was really a blessing that no one saw that. She did have one ultrasound. She didn't want to have more. I was really happy that she didn't have more. And we didn't need to cut the cord because of the tight umbilical cord. Cassandra Jha, who's a beautiful midwife there in Austin, Texas, she was with me. And it was quite beautiful how we just unwrapped the cord. It was very tight, but we were able to do it. My daughter was squatting and howling and bringing her baby out with such beautiful strength. So this is Perry. She's actually the daughter of the midwife in the middle that's in orange. She and her husband and her midwife friends and her doula, they all form what I like to call, Dr. Iftikhar from Hope Foundation calls it a golden chain of support. And because even some of the poorest women, for example, in India and Bangladesh, they find a way to get a tiny little gold chain. And what's at the center of the gold chain? The mother. And every single link in that chain, every link is strong and must be strong so that mothers and babies don't just survive childbirth, but they survive with their integrity and they survive feeling incredibly empowered. This baby's placenta is still connected. You can see down in the right-hand corner, the cord and placenta are still connected, which is the indigenous way in Bali. Here's a mother. She was fully dilated. Daily in a dreamy way, said, really want someone to check me because I think I might be fully dilated. And so I did reach down there and I could feel that her baby was really bulging and coming. And I said, I think you're right. And her own cousin, Widdy, is the midwife that supported her through in her entire pregnancy, and her husband. And I just love this picture. Here's a mama with that face and that confidence and just waiting for her body to say, okay, push when you're ready. And nobody was pushing her. She was the one during the steering of, and the celebrating of this birth. These are our Balinese midwives, our Indonesian midwives at Bumi Sehat in Bali. We practice Trihita Karana, which is a traditional philosophy for well-being in Bali. And that's harmony with spirit, harmony with nature, and harmony with humans. So you think of the science of medicine as the harmony with humans. We don't throw the science of medicine away, but we only use it wisely and we don't take it out unless we need it. Harmony with nature, we know that childbirth is a natural experience as much as possible. We support that natural process. And then spirit being the most important. We call it adat here in Indonesia, that for the mothers to feel safe, we can't have babies feeling safe unless mothers are feeling safe and families are feeling safe. And that is what we do. We support the health of families and the health of communities with the bowing down to Mother Nature and Father Time, the bowing down to, of course, our medical skills, and especially the bowing down to the adat, or the spiritual life of the family and the mother especially. Hey, and my last slide is my granddaughter Rimba, because she came upstairs. She was dressed up as the Easter Christmas solstice Galungan witch. And she's always a source of joy for our family. And I'm not sure where she learned this, maybe from me, but she always says, girls are better. We just are. So that's it. I guess I can unshare the screen. Hi. Can you hear me, Rhonda?
Yes, we hear you wonderfully.
Hi. I don't know how much time you want to spend, but if there's time for questions, I'd love to be available. Let's see. Rita was raising her hand. Nutrition that is very similar effect as the weight. Oh, okay. So this is something is this from you, Rhonda, that the berries have rutin in them? And that is a similar effect to the white and citrus fruits.
Yeah, I just always like to bring that up because, we're not an area that has citrus foods, but of course everywhere in all of the different climates and places creators provided, and so it's those rose hips for that vitamin C. It's that all of the berries literally just having such roots and story of being essential for us to even hold blood in our bodies, and that we just know how much these support the circulatory system, and just all of the science behind it just echoes the stories of why these foods were important. So when you were speaking about the citrus, I just always like to remind us of that in all of our different territories that we hold these traditional foods.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. I'm not sure. Okay, here's someone. Patricia says that my Nana taught to sip on lemon peel and water for stress during pregnancy. That's a really good teaching, Patricia. Here we don't make cold lemonade. We make it warm. So we have jungle honey, and we have jeruk nipis, which is little limes that are native to our area, and we squeeze those, and we drink the warm. We add warmer hot water. Um, let's see. I have some really good things to share in that when I first came to Bali, and I was pregnant quite quickly after I came here with Hanuman, my youngest boy, and I I would go to friends' houses and I would see little jars, and inside the little jars would sometimes be a little river plant and some guppies, little tiny fish. And I'd say, oh, how sweet, you have a little aquarium. And they say, no, 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 that's necessary. That's not just an aquarium. That's not like something that you put there to look at the fish swim around, because the fish belong in the river. And I say, what is it for? And they'd say, well, the fish have slime on them, and the mother drinks a little bit of that water every night, and then we replace it. But the slime goes in the mother and makes childbirth easier. So I love that the women were drinking fish slime water.
It's lovely.
Someone gave me a couple guppies in a clear glass jar, an old cracked clear glass jar, and I arrived in Bali nearly 30 years ago, and we still, our electricity in our village was stolen from the temple in the village next door, and it was a piece of speaker wire. So about 10 families were able to each have a 10-watt light bulb. And also, when the termites would fly, because there was so little protein available to women, when the termites would fly, the grandmothers would hang up a lantern, and they would run and put a bowl of water, or their biggest thing that they could find, a bucket or anything with water, so that the lantern would reflect in the bucket and the termites would fly into the water and get stuck. And then those would be all gathered up, and they would flash fry the termites in coconut oil, which they made by hand. Usually the widows in the village would make the coconut oil because it was very work intensive, and they were very patient and took the time to make the coconut oil. That was how they survived. And so the termites would get flash fried with coconut oil and a little salt thrown on them, and that was the snacks for the pregnant moms, so that they would survive childbirth.
So I'd love to, so there are many additional questions and things in the Q&A section, but I would also just, I'm curious if we can speak a little bit about, you shared a lot about disparities, and also so many different places where clinics and midwives and birth centers, and a balance of where Indigenous traditions have stayed strong, and the newer younger midwives that are going to schools. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time, because there's a lot of people on this call, a lot of people who message that really, really want to help reclaim birth in their territories. And there's been so much harm, so much separation from, our Indigenous healers and midwives, and that so often we have, a shatters of community, and all of the wounds and all of the traumas and all of the other aspects, and there's a humongous surge of people who really want to step forward on that path and don't know where to begin. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time, and there's other Q&A questions that I'd also love to get to, but in particular, how to pave that way, in each of our individual communities, and how to answer, the requests from the families who really want to reclaim birth and to be in community. And so I just wanted to see if we could speak about that for a little while.
So difficult, isn't it? I was blessed because I became a teenage mom. So my teacher, my greatest teacher, was my first child, came to me, and my grandmother, my Filipino grandmother, was still alive, and so she could instruct me and she could encourage me. And I feel like for each of us, it's that same thing, as we're in this storm. It's a big global storm of having childbirth and healthcare, and even the food we eat and the way we live our lives has been totally colonized. And yet we're in these small individual boats trying to sail around and survive the storm. And the storm in childbirth is really great. And the need for each person listening to do what they can to be in service to their own communities. I know that for a while we were helping the North American midwives come here and get their numbers and to help to get their hands on for their practicum so they could take the NARM exam, for example, so that they had a certain amount of training, but waiting to follow a home birth midwife around for 2 or 3 years or more was really taking long. However, the Indonesian regulations no longer allow us to do that, and also North American Registry of Midwives no longer allows the out-of-country births to count. So there are so many barriers to becoming a birth keeper. But I feel like the thing about birth keepers, all of us that have it in our bones, we're incredibly stubborn. And we're well resourced in that we care about each other. We do what we can to lift up the younger generation of Indigenous midwives and midwives all over in their own communities. Uh, I don't have any answers except for don't give up and don't quit. And if raising your own children and teaching them how to garden and teaching them how to pick wild food, if that's what needs to be done first, that is part of your education, and that is the most important part. If taking care of your elder grandmother or mother is part of your day-to-day life, that is part of your education. Um, our great grandmothers didn't have to go to school and didn't have to jump through so many hoops. And now with colonization, we do have to jump through so many hoops. And we just need to sort of put our nose to the grindstone. And sometimes we just have to jump. Uh, Follow your heart. I wish I had better answers to that. Did you want to add anything, Patricia or Rhonda?
I'd love to hear from you as well, Patricia, if you want to speak. But I think that I also give that same response, in that it's hard, but that it's worth it. And I think that we do just have to keep going, and we have to support each other, and we have to, create more schools. And, like, for example, you mentioned about, no longer having people go overseas to train, and that at the same time, there weren't as many people of color that were actually doing that travel. And so there is this real harm that can happen with, the practicing on Black and brown bodies when it's not done, when it's not held in check by people who are holding a space and holding accountability. And so there are some schools, the midwifery schools, that are still allowing that. It's the PEP process that is no longer allowing that. And that's because the PEP process is so independent. And so there was not necessarily oversight. I mean, at a clinic such as yours, it's going to be there, but it's, other spaces, there's such a dynamic that exists. And so, while I've loved, having experience with global health, and have loved all of those different times and moments and experiences, I also, I want community members to be catching each other's babies, and that's what, we all are wanting as well. And so how to get people there when so many reservations, so many territories, there are not midwives that are there to be the teachers. And that so many people are drowning in the schools. And it's a constant, but I do think having more people, more preceptors, more schools, more opportunities will happen. We just have to keep fighting our way through the systems so that then we can be that for the next set of midwives who want to follow that path.
And lifting those midwives up, I know that Jenny Joseph School has now been accredited, and I know that women of color, Indigenous midwives, women of color are going to be first chosen to get into that school. But how do they find the resources to pay the tuition. And that's where we come in. That's where us elders come in and just try to raise the money. I'm actually shocked at how generous people have been during this time of global pandemic. I thought we'd be really facing the closure of centers. It's the opposite. We've been really blessed. So when we have a young midwife who has a seat in a midwifery training program of her choice, let's help her get through that, all of us together. And Rhonda and Patricia, I cannot read anymore. I don't see any more.
So it's on the Q&A section.
Why do you think the babies decide to come in breech position when there's a strife happening in the environment? Well, the world starts to spin around and babies spin. They're just so, babies are listening. They know what's going on. And also my grandmother, my Filipino grandmother, she would always say, she was a breech baby. She would always say that the healers come in backwards. And she'd say they come in ready to run and do their life, run around and do what they need to do. So I feel like this happens when we need more healers on the earth. The healers come. And some of them come just normally, but some of them make it known from the beginning. Also, cord around the neck. The Balinese believe both things, that the healers come in feet first and or they'll come in with cord around their neck. And so there you go. When the need is there, for sure the babies are going to answer that need. So Montreal Douglas says, my question is what to be done. I'm not sure.
For that one, I typed in an answer. It's just, deep grief and sadness for a client of theirs with just twins and breech and not being allowed to be normal. And so I just suggested the Coalition for Breech Birth to try and find a provider. And then a comment was made just that, the resources are exhausted and the number of providers are few. And then, wanting to just be schedule that cesarean so that they can at least just close this chapter, is very real. And so then to just, having an ask, for prayers of peace and acceptance, and that there are so many, broken realities when it comes to the medicalization of birth. And it is hard in the level of anxiety people are feeling about their birth needing to be just so in order to not have major surgery is really a challenge. So that is just kind of catches you up a little bit. But yeah, if we can just, honor this doula's request to just take a moment and send a love to that family, that that peace can be found, and that power can be found in whatever their birth ends up being.
Absolutely. I'm sitting here with Kim, who was a breech twin and born normally. So I think for her, that's quite a touching story, really affecting her.
I did want to add something to what you said, Robin. Well, there's a couple of things about, bringing birth back. We talked a lot about this with the group of midwives that Rhonda and I are part of. And I do think, as you said, everything is in your bundle. Everything you learn prepares you to be a baby catcher. And I also think, I am part of this organization called Indigenous Alliance Without Borders, and we recently participated in the Universal Periodic Review of the United States on their human rights record. And I do think we need to meet with the internet, with WHO as midwives, and we need to challenge the growing medicalization and the growing regulation of the traditional midwives. And, I think that and I think as we have more of the young midwives coming up with that courageous spirit that they have, that fire that they have, I think we'll have people going, to the international bodies to really demand that they listen to us and allow us to determine the parameters of traditional midwifery, especially for Indigenous communities. So I think that it's not maybe the time yet, but I think the time will come when that kind of push will happen, a pushback, and certifying our own. So over time, we'll have those structures in place for us to certify our own. But I think that this regulation is definitely part of the ongoing colonization that will eventually be able to have more of a critical mass to fight against it.
In the last 4 years, Indonesian midwives have been told they can no longer receive the breech, they can no longer do twins, they can no longer do VBACs, and that they are threatened with loss of license if they do that. So what happens is mothers in those situations will avoid prenatal care. Even with their midwives, they will avoid it, and they'll show up in advanced labor so that they can get the help that they need from the women they want to look after them. So it puts lives at risk. I mean, a woman died here because the hospital she went to did not have rapid tests and was required to rapid test her. And then she went to another hospital and another one, and looking for a place to have her baby, she lost her life, and her baby lost her life because of a rapid test. Now the rapid tests are available, but this was in the beginning of the pandemic. There's just so many ways which our hands are tied, and how we help this next generation to be empowered and to untie. I keep saying that we have to speak the language of love, because if we speak the language of hatred and the language of war, then we're just speaking the colonist language. So we have to go back to, rooting ourselves on the earth and finding a way. I feel like this committee is an amazing thing. If there's anything I can do to help or be on it, I would do that. And once travel opens up again, I would travel to be able to help make policy if that was something that was needed of me or wanted. And the Sambi, that's Andrographix paniculata. It's not native to the Americas, but it's all over Asia, Southeast Asia, China, India, and it's Andrographix paniculata, and we use it for prevention and we use it for cure. We use it in higher doses for cure. And it lowers sperm count, but increases libido. So the men out there it's a good time to lower your sperm count, guys, and to increase your libido. So I've had a lot of people say that they felt like they were getting exposed to COVID, and they really were scared and they wanted to take this herb, but they didn't want to reduce their sperm count, but they were really afraid of losing their libido. So for our brothers out there, take your herbs.
Yeah, every midwife I know is in the middle of baby storms right now. Just all of this for our lockdown in March, and all of these babies are here. But yeah, so it's certainly what gives me hope, is being able to welcome these new babies, and and the families are just planting those gardens again, and just cutting out all of the things that they realized are not important. And so I am just trying to hold on to those pieces, and am loving all of the new COVID babies that are here now.
Yeah, there are a lot of them coming, and it's interesting. There's a Filipina-American doula, Kay, who is looking for resources in Filipino tradition and things like that. Kay, you can try to message me through, it's hard through Facebook, or WhatsApp me. I'm trying to think. If you want my email, if you're listening still, or anybody needs my email, it's Ibu Robin, IBUROBIN at bumisehat, BUMISEHAT.org. And for example, if there are any of my books that you would like to read and you don't have the money to buy them online, I will give those to you. So let me know. And there are resources out there. And how are the Helots trained? That's a good question. Helots were trained by following their grandmothers. It was definitely heart to hands, head to head. spirit to spirit. It's like any indigenous culture. Caitlin talking about berries. Newfoundland, wow. There was a community that sent a community way up in northern Alaska of indigenous people that sent someone to our doula training. We scholarshiped her in, and they paid for her airfare so she could come in 2012 and train with us. She was an incredible birth keeper. Elaine, Teresa McLean, who's my cousin, by the way. Yeah, she had a cold here when she was visiting Bali last year, and she did lime, ginger, and honey. Hi, Teresa. Okay, industrial. So Melissa would like to not support the industrial health complex in America. She's a doula in Denver. She wants to travel and learn how to better serve women and laboring humans. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry if I excluded anybody by not saying laboring people or families come in all kinds of. We just don't have women having babies anymore. We also have some families have two moms. Some families have all kinds of configurations. So we need to open our hearts to that for sure in our service. Where would you start training during the pandemic? That's really difficult because you can't travel much. Again, this pandemic's getting our attention. So sometimes you can start your training online. You're already, you want to train with an indigenous midwife. I don't know. Are there any resources out there, Patricia or Rhonda, with the Center for Indigenous Midwifery to begin online trainings for some of the people?
We're working on it. I mean, there's our Indigenous Childbirth Educator training program we just launched, and then I do birth assistant, midwifery assistant trainings, and more is on its way. But what I will just say is that we are working on with each birth keeper gathering, we've, and Margaret David, who's on this call, has kept, been really wonderful with, keeping names and that we've been paying attention, and that there's a lot of people who are finding their way through. But at this point, there's a lot more people who are Indigenous and want to step into midwifery than are currently available to be the teachers, and that we want that to change. But at this point, it's happening, it's moving, and helping people connect and find each other is one of the goals with that. And so I would just say, and I'm assuming that you are an Indigenous person, the person who's asking, just because that is definitely where our priority is. And, is just really trying to help people get the training that they seek, so that they can step forward on that path, and that it's not a fast one. It's one that takes a lot of time. And so, but there are so many things with academics, with studies, with personal ceremony, with plant medicine teachings, with connecting in community. There are so many things that can be done to help people on their path to midwifery, even if shadowing in a clinic or attending births isn't possible with COVID limitations. But really having the solid academics is also really necessary. And I loved that you made space for that. And I loved the video Guerrilla Midwife, and speaking about just the rice. And I think when I talk about hemorrhage in the birth assistant training, that's something that I just really try and ground us in, is that, I really believe that my ancestors would want us to hold all of the tools, and that it's also that we have to hold both sets of tools these days, because, so many people are struggling with food and resources and all of these burdens that contribute to things such as bleeding. And so, you might just focus on aspects that are the academics right now, and then, open up to that preceptorship later in the future.
Thank you so much for making that available. It's so important. And yeah, the strife of modern life. I mean, we have so many mothers with hypertension. We have, even and the malnutrition. I read an article many years ago, and I was one of those things where it wasn't online, and I should have cut it out. And it talked about a nutritionist was talking about that a handful of spinach 100 years earlier. So I read this article about 30 years ago. So 130 years ago, a handful of spinach would give you everything you needed for your vitamin and minerals for the day. But now, even organic spinach doesn't have the same ojas, the same energy in it. It doesn't have the same, because of our soil is depleted in our modern lifestyle, that you'd have to eat almost a barrel or almost a bushel of spinach to get the same nutrients. So it's one of the reasons why we do have our medical skills to stop hemorrhage and to help with blood pressure issues. I'll never forget the traditional midwives in Aceh teaching me, and then I brought that to the Philippines, and then I found traditional midwives in the Philippines who had the same knowledge, that the star fruit leaves, you put them in water, and you don't, when you're in a disaster zone, people don't even have a way to cook. So you just take the leaves and you put them in the water and you squeeze them until the water is a pale green and bitter, and you drink that, and it'll lower your blood pressure 60 points. And then 2 hours later, you some more because it's got a rebound. Um, oh, good, Kay, you got my email. Um, let's see, trying to see. Talked about the 3-year process of midwives and watching the people in the situation. It helps to put, a tiny situation so much more perspective. I learned, this is from Giovanni, from you and the people you describe all around you. Does your organization somehow extend throughout Indonesia, or are there many government obstacles? So we've learned to dance with the government very well. We have 4 birth centers and community health clinics in Indonesia, one in Lombok, one in Papua, the Indonesian side of Papua, but the Papua New Guinea people do come over the mountain to come to our place, because we're right on the border there. We're in Aceh since the tsunami, and we've been there since 2004. And we're here in Bali. So we're in 4 places and 2 in the Philippines. So anybody that wants me to help local women open their own place, we have to find a way to find funding for that. But for example, in Papua and in the Philippines, it was the local women, the indigenous mothers and fathers, who gave the land. So that showed a huge commitment. And then from there, I was able to find the money for buildings. Somehow I have to type in my email address so everyone can get it. Someone is dreaming of being a midwife, and you can do right now. We talked about that for preparing for a midwifery future. The remedy for blood pressure is starfruit leaves, and you don't even have to boil them. You deramas. Derabus is boiled, deramas is squeezed. And I'm sure there must be some North American ones too. So I am about to launch a Patreon page, which will make it easier for me to do things like support other birth keepers in the art of midwifery, especially Indigenous midwifery. I'm hoping to. Oh, and Margaret, I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name of except I think her name was Elaine. I can't remember her full name, but she was very difficult for me to say. Her tribe is like that. It was a very interesting, but she's way up there north, where the women are actually preserving salmon and their berries and harvesting food for long winters and doing a great job of taking birth back up there. So yeah, anyone who is interested in joining a Patreon page with me, I'm hoping to give content that will be something special and unique. And I'm hoping that the support of a Patreon page will give me a way to support more birth keepers on their path, and more keeping Bumi Sehat alive. Rose, thank you for mentioning that. I'm so happy that I was able to fortify you in some small way, that you had your VBAC after 2 belly births. Well done. Well done.
So you're saying to support all of the different work, and something that I always just love seeing, and that I just love in the videos and things that are being spoken about is that you can't separate, midwives aren't just where we go to work and then just go home. That you can't separate reproductive justice from environmental justice. You can't separate caring for the babies and not also tend to the elders. That all of that work is one of the ways in which midwifery is different. And so I loved that you shared that. But what are the ways that people can offer support right now, to the programs that you're working with?
Well, there's always just going on the website Bumi Sehat, or my personal website, Ibu Robin. There are ways to support that way. But my new thing that I'm going to launch soon, I hope, is a Patreon page, just because I've really gotten into thinking a lot about this art of asking. And there are lots of people out in the world there who are really generous and who want to help other birth keepers. And it gives me a way. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Amanda Palmer, but she has an incredibly successful Patreon page, and she's able to support people with all kinds of needs all over the world, artists, musicians, mothers, single mothers, and she's able to help them because her Patreon page is so successful. So we'll just see. It'll be an opportunity for some people to have a little bit of a closer contact with me on a daily basis. Or I don't think I will publish content daily, but just message you. But people can message me that way on my Patreon page. So let's see. I'm a little nervous about it because I've never done it before, but I'm going to do it.
At certain levels, people can Zoom you.
Yeah.
At certain levels, people can Zoom call
At certain levels, people who donate a lot on the monthly Patreon can Zoom me anytime or make an appointment to Zoom me. So again, it's just another way of using this. This is one of the things that we're so fortunate and blessed that we do have this internet tool that I can talk to you from Bali. I can talk on WhatsApp to the women catching the babies in the Philippines, in our WADA centers there, and our Bumi Sehat clinics all over Indonesia and all over the world. Just having this daily contact with each other, it's not the same as hugging. I'm sorry, I really miss hugging. It's really hard. I think I've become the fairy godmother of hugs in this country. And I'm sad about that, but we have each other still, and we have each other's backs, and we have each other's butts, and that we're lifting each other up.
Beautiful. And I mean, you're right. I do have faith that it's not the finances that will truly be the barriers to helping people become birth keepers. That there are resources, there are people who want to sponsor. It is there. And that doesn't mean that even with all of the financial resources away, that it's easy. It's still it's a life commitment that's still an extreme challenge. And so I also think it's okay. Like someone commented that they are, full with mothering right now, and that's okay. There are, it will come in its time, and there's a lot of things to learn and do and support until, it's right for each person.
Yeah. And it is kind of like a trail of tears, just getting to the dream that, we grow up with this dream, and I feel like we nurture, even as a little girl, I felt like I nurtured this dream to want to be there for mothers and babies and for people who are having babies. And I didn't know how I would do that, but I nurtured that dream like I would my first baby. Probably my dream, my first baby that actually came out of my vagina and my uterus is 44 years old now, but my first baby was my dream. And so I feel like we need to lift each other up. Like, let's keep each other's butts in our hands and lift each other up so that each of us can nurture our dreams. I don't feel like those dreams are given to us by accident. They're given to us to fill a need on the earth, the need of our own people. And many of us out there like me are very displaced. You know, I don't live in the Philippines, but I'm Filipina, and I have grandchildren that are of many cultures, but Indonesian grandchildren, half of them, and one is Mexican and very much on the path to being a birth keeper. And we'll just see what happens with the next generation.
Okay, are there any further questions? I'm looking at the Q&A, and I believe we tended to each of those. But if there is anyone who would like to be unmuted and would like to speak, please. This is the first time I've done a webinar, and I can't figure out how to allow everyone the permission to unmute. But I know 3 participants have raised their hand. So I'm going to try that. Okay, Angel.
Hi. Sorry, I was putting my my questions on the Q&A, but for some reason it didn't register. Magandang hapon, Jan. I wanted to ask, with that herb you mentioned earlier, the sambolito.
Yeah.
Sambiloto, is that to cure COVID or is it to help with symptoms?
Both.
Oh, both. Okay.
It will cure and it will prevent. And yeah, it's in the Philippines. It's called Cinta or Serpentina.
Oh, wow.
And in India, it's called Calme.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So if you have Filipino friends, are you in the Philippines, Angela?
No, I'm in California, but I teach Philippine ancestral medicine, herbal medicine class. So I was so excited to hear that there's something that's already being used over there.
Right now in Thailand, they're doing clinical trials on the sambiroto or the Andrographix paniculata.
But sambilato is not moringa, correct?
No, that malunggay. But we are making, because it's so bitter. It's so bitter. And some of the mothers worry that their milk will be bitter. But no babies have rejected their mother's milk because of the bitterness. I'm sure that it makes the milk bitter. But we've also given malunggay, half sambiroto. We've mixed it.
I see.
We call it down kelor here. And we've mixed it, and then we've encapsulated the powder, dried, powdered, and mixed. I mean, it's always nice to pick the plant, and optimal to pick the plant from your garden and squeeze it and drink it right away. I don't mind it so much. It's really bitter. I took this herb in Aceh every day. I ate a couple leaves a day because the mosquitoes there were carrying malaria, and I never got malaria. It's also a cure for malaria.
So it's like an overall antiviral?
Yes. Yeah, very powerful antiviral. And the studies are showing that it actually attacks the coronavirus on 4 different levels of the virus. So it's a pretty amazing thing. And then I have a medical doctor at Sangla Hospital he's starting a study here, but he says, and we're providing him with the herbs. He says, but in the laboratory, it doesn't have that much antiviral activity. But it's not just the antiviral aspect of the herb. There's so many ways that plants nourish us and feed us and heal us. So you can't say, well, it doesn't have as much antiviral effect as, say, like purple sweet potatoes. By the way, sweet potatoes are medicine for your uterus, and most indigenous people eat some kind of sweet potato. And they're also antiviral, especially the purple ones. But all sweet potatoes are antiviral. So, and the botanist that I've been working with, he's actually from South Africa originally, but he's in Brazil right now, and he's not found. And of course he cannot get in where he's growing plants and picking wild plants. He can't get the Andrographix paniculata or the sambiroto. So we did send him some seeds. I don't know if that's quite the right thing to do, but he's looking for something there in South and Central America that will that will have the same effect. But so far, this is the #1 herb on earth to fight the viruses.
Do you know what family it's in? Is it a tree? Is it a bush?
The bush, it grows from seeds. It likes partial sunshine or shade. It's a weed in my garden. It's it's everywhere. So,
Great.
yeah, your friends in the Philippines. Actually, Maria Teresa Maniago, Tet Maniago, who's our executive director in the Philippines, and she called me at the beginning of this. I think it must have been in March. She called me crying, and she said, "This is going to be so bad. It's going to kill my parents. It's going to kill all our elders. What are we going to do without our elders?" And I thought that too. You know, what would the people who, in our indigenous communities, our elders don't go to old folks' homes generally. They are a valuable part of the family life. I mean, the grandparents and the great grandparents make it so that the younger generation can go get the educations and follow their dreams and get the preparation they need to lay foundations to be able to live in this modern world and be healers as well. So many of our elders, I don't know what the families would do without them. And when we looked at that, we looked at the early statistics of what could happen. And Tet was just in tears. And I said, well, hold on. And I sent her all the information on Sambiroto. And she called me back. And this was 3 a.m. And she said, my father has like this half a hectare of land right in front of our house that has just been covered with Sambiroto for the last few years. And I keep telling him to mow down that horrible weed and to plant something. And he keeps saying, no, it's a sacred herb. And he's right. So they've been drying and powdering the herb and sending it all over the Philippines now. So,
Wow. That's great. I've always been taught that what shows up is what we need. So
absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Rachel Sullivan, I can go ahead and unmute you now.
Hi, thank you so much, Robin. My name is Rachel. I'm currently in Miwok territories in California. The question, I'm Visayan, Filipina, and when I went to go visit Kalinga, I just wanted to know the reasoning why there's that home birth is banned. So, when I was visiting the Mabalon tribe in Kalinga, their houses, their villages on the cliffs of the Cordilleros, and they, the women says sometimes they wait, and by the time they walk all the way down, they've already given birth, but they're not allowed. None of their husbands are allowed to catch. They would get arrested.
Exactly.
So I'm just wondering why did home birth change?
It was colonized. And, even when I was there, 1999, we took our children there and stayed a year up in Baguio. And I spent a lot of time teaching natural family planning and working with the Helots up in the mountains there. And because that's my mother's roots, ancestral people. And they were still, the Helots were working and taking care of the women at home. And with the support of the public health nurses, that there was a program there for them to work together, and that got totally taken away. And I don't know what we can do, because these far-flung areas, it's dangerous, and women die trying to get to Baguio City to the hospital from the Kalinga areas. There's so many Ifugao people up there, and Kankanai, and all the tribal peoples. And if you live a 6-hour hike from the Hanselma Highway, how are you going to get to where you can even hitch a ride, if you can find one, to go to the hospital in the city? It's terrible.
That's what they said. They said that by the time they try and even find a car to get them there. And I know one of my elders is in Banawe, Ifugao also. So, and they don't even talk about their births anymore.
No.
Okay, and then I think the other question I have is, so does Lagundi I know that it's different than the sambalito, correct? The Lagundi tea, it's found in the Philippines as well. And
Different,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, and it's primarily, because I know that the Philippine government was doing their research for COVID-19. But what I'm understanding, the sambalito is more potent than Lagundi.
Yes, it is more potent. And they both work, but again, this is just the most potent one. And I was looking at how can we give away and make it easy. That's why we dried and encapsulated and also we use social media. I mean, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, is a Balinese rock star. So he got in social media and showed everybody that he was drinking this herb. He was picking it from the garden. And so then people would, and there's so many herbologists and just grandmothers providing these herbs out there for the people in their own areas. So he's really done a lot to promote people to take it. Even President of Indonesia, Jokowi, said to people, I'm drinking my herbs. And it was effective. But yeah, it's interesting what a strange thing is happening in the Philippines because, for example, the study of herbs, there's beautiful books on it, there's support, but then you have these far-flung areas where the women are cut off from any kind of help in pregnancy and childbirth because they're living so far away and they're living in their tribal customary ways, and they're actually being punished to death for being who they are. And I just talked to a beautiful Filipina who's actually here now in Bali and staying in our village. And she says there is funding to do some kind of a birth center that is culturally appropriate up in those Cordillera Mountains. There is funding available and she knows how to get it. So I'm happy to go there and help any way I can to get it set up so that the women there can start working again. And I feel like what we'd have to do is get a special permission from the government that the helots could begin working again and working hand in hand with the medically trained professionals so that nobody falls through the cracks.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to remember that whether it's the Philippines or all over here on Turtle Island, that these policies, these broad sweeping, federal, state policies are not being made, by Indigenous matriarchs, they are being made by people who don't have the pulse on the needs of the local in your region community. And so the impacts on someone who's in the city and is being ordered to go to a facility for birth are not the same as someone who's in the mountains where there is no transportation available. And that's in different places where I've traveled to, it's a similar story in each place of where you're ordered to go to the facility, but yet the roads are gone for 6 months of the year, and yet you're still supposed to get there somehow. Or the number of people whose babies came out as they stepped off of the motorcycle, because that's the only transportation to get them there. That all of those are definite realities of trying to move birth away from the community and into facilities. That is common in so many places, many places. But you're right, Rachel, the difference in how it impacts each community is going to be felt very differently, and it is being punished to death. And I think that all the Indigenous people on this call can really understand that. We have people who are ordered to go to IHS, Indian Health Services approved providers, that are 5 hours away, and that's the only prenatal care they're able to go to. They're not allowed to go to other people. There's a lot of dynamics and a lot of wrongs, and getting more midwives, more people within the systems and without it, is a big part of helping this to shift.
Right.
Yeah, and I think when I was talking to some of the traditional midwives and healers, it was almost like they were too they were okay with me, but they just didn't want me talking, you know, to outside sources where they got the information, because they felt like their life could be at jeopardy if, you know, they actually helped a pregnant woman. Because sometimes, you know, when you're walking down those long staircases, what are you going to do? Just let the woman, you know, the birthing woman, just, I don't know, handle it. So yeah, there's a lot of work, and I'm looking forward to seeing someone represent Indigenous midwifery at the WHO, because I think it needs to go there.
Mhm. It really
So.
does. Mhm. Yeah. And of course the women are afraid. Of course they are, because they have been, you know, they've been punished to death for being who they are. So they know that if they speak the truth, or if they speak out against the colonizer in any way, they know everyone has a family story, a generation or two or three or four back or more. My friends who are Maori from Aotearoa talk about the Maori Health Act. And I don't know if it was 1909, 1910, where all Maori women were forbidden to breastfeed their babies.
Wow.
And that, yes, uh, this was a law, and it was absolutely forbidden to breastfeed your baby, and the government provided the infant formula for you. And my friend Takaha, his grandmother was a renegade, and she breastfed her children. Her child that survived. She did not breastfeed all of them. She breastfed the one that survived. Her siblings, and she and her siblings, there were 6 of them that they had. Among them, they had 21 babies. One survived, the one that was secretly breastfed. 20 babies died.
Wow.
You know, my friend Takaha says, I don't have the cousins. I don't have the you know, the joy of having what I could have had. Had I had all of my cousins survive, or even some of them. So this is something that you know, it's not just the medical professionals, or you know, steering this. It goes to the politics of food, profit. You know, Nestle is the devil. Let's just be honest. Uh, and and feeding babies infant formula, which is not a replacement for mother's milk, and making it impossible for mothers to do what they know is best, and to do what our grandmothers would have helped them do. I don't believe that that mothers fail to breastfeed. I believe that the support system isn't there, and that makes it difficult for so many. So.
Okay, Nadia, you were next with hand up.
Hello. I am just coming home from work, so I was waiting on the call, and so I scooted into the house. I just wanted to say hello, Tanse, to, I know a lot of my birth worker sisters are on here, and I miss you guys so much. I just wanted to say thank you to Robin, particularly. I've been following you for a very long time. I'm an acupuncturist as well. And I was in clinic for the first hour of the session, so I'm not sure if you spoke to acupuncture at all, but
But my daughter's an acupuncturist. And,
yeah. So, and I guess the placenta piece too is the other part where your name has come up over the years, but I just wanted to get on and say hello.
Another one on placenta.
Yeah.
Placenta.
It's an interesting journey, because I did a lot of placenta medicine for like 12 years or so. And then as I journeyed back into my Indigenous culture and learned more of the teachings about keeping it and the teachings behind that. So I don't really do a lot of placenta medicine in that way, in terms of encapsulation anymore. But yeah, I came across your book again as I was unpacking. And so I was so happy to see that you're on tonight. So I just wanted to say hello, and thank you so much for taking the time. And I really look forward to doing some more work following in your footsteps in that way. Looking at your sunshine and looking at our snow here, I thought, I think I'd like to be in Bali.
Yeah, it's been rainy, but it's been great. We're really blessed because we have really low transmission of the virus.
I like it raining.
You like it raining? My grandmother likes it. This is Brenda.
Yeah, we're in Treaty 6 territory here, just in north central Alberta in Canada.
Oh, you're really up there. Ooh, that's wicked cold up there.
Yeah, it's not too bad. But anyways, thank you so much. Thanks, Rhonda, for letting me unmute. I just wanted to say hello.
Okay. All right. How about Kiana?
Aloha, aunties. Thank you so much for allowing this space to be facilitated, and also just wanting to honor Uncle Takaha and his family. I saw the wind picking up as you were sharing that story, Auntie Robin. So thank you so much for bringing their lifeline to this space. Really, Auntie Robin, or any of the aunties, how in your travels have you felt that dream time comes up, the relationship with dream time, whether that's name ceremonies, whether that's the birth going to happen, and then separately from that, have you come across any rituals that were specific to healing the birthing human from sexual trauma, like known sexual trauma before baby comes earthside?
Wow, that's a beautiful question, and we could do a whole several hours on that, on both those questions, or both parts of it. The whole issue of sexual abuse is so hard. It's such a big one, and it's a real one. We see it, and we deal with it. Everyone in childbirth deals with it, and it's one of the things that when we do give our loving, respectful, culturally appropriate care, that it can really help with the healing. Not always, but I'm amazed at how resilient people are, and how a birthing human can bring a baby forth no matter what they've had to overcome, and how birth takes us down to the last brick, to our authentic selves. And I've seen women who were so terribly abused come out triumphant. And so it's if making that space and giving women those choices, and people, not just women, but people who are having babies with choices, it's really an important part of our lives. It's an important part of what our commitment is as birth keepers. In terms of dreams, I don't know. I dream about owls a lot. We call them chilapuk here, and so I dream about owls, and I'm sure many of the birth keepers do, because they hunt at night, and we birth keepers go out at night. You know, I've seen this village before there were actual roads, when it was just broken coral on the pathways between houses. I've seen this village change and grow, and I've seen it at night, whereas lots of people don't go out at night. And when people see me out and about at night going to birth, they're really, they ask me if I'm okay. And I say, of course, I'm fine with it. I mean, even the dogs know me in the world. Yeah. And I know that the pueo is big. I mean, the pueo, when I was living in Hawaii for 13 years, was a big amakua for me, really big.
Yes, that's one of my family's amakuas as well. So it's so lovely that you brought it up. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. We have, in our Pacific Island communities, for example, in Micronesia, the Marshall Islanders, by 2030, even if the crisis of global crisis, climate change, even if it stops and they change everything right now, by 2030, they will be submerged. They will no longer have island to live on in the Marshall Islands. So these are things that, how can you support a community to have more babies where will they go? It's a small island nation, but where will they go? No one's going to open their arms and welcome them. I know Hawaii did welcome the Bikini Islanders when their island was bombed by the U.S. military into oblivion. But the rest of those little islands, there's nowhere the modern world is just going to open up and say, yeah, come on in. I know they're moving the Rohingya people to islands off the coast of of Bangladesh, but those islands flood every year. They're
Mm.
underwater. I don't know how those Rohingya people are going to live. How are they going to grow food, and how are they going to birth and bring in the next generation? So these are all things that, as a grandmother, I think about all the time. And of course, it's in our dreams. My grandmother comes to me in dreams often, and she lets me know that, I'm okay. One of the most profound dreams that I have reoccurring is my younger self coming to say to my elder self, thank you for holding my dream sacred and for keeping it going through hell and high water. I was a single mother for many, many years, and it was the love of my children that really supported me. And my single mother years were in Hawaii. It was the love of my community, my ohana there was strong, and still is. I still really have a lot of love for that area. And there are Hawaiian birth keepers who are struggling to get their education and get themselves where they want to be, because they don't want to take the tests. They're not, that's not how they're made. They should not be forced to be educated in a way that doesn't suit their culture and their deep beingness. So we have to find solutions together for all of our birth keepers.
Malama pono, Auntie. Appreciate it.
Love you. Thank you.
I would like to say something to Kiana regarding those two questions. As you said, Robin, the dream, our dream ceremonies, they're going to vary, but it's one of our strongest medicines, and Gaji Cook, really has taught us so well about that. And if you ever look up any of her lectures, that the ones that are online, she talks about it sometimes. And so I think that there are dreams, and then there are ceremonies, actually very old ceremonies, to help bring dreams forward, like to help us see. And it takes a lot of preparation and training to be able to be steady with the dreams, to be consistent. But so I think that you probably have a lot of medicine around you to help you with that there with the Kanaka people. With trauma, I guess it depends on our cultures, how we treat it, but definitely for medicine from the South, meaning indigenous peoples of Mesoamerica, like what we know today, what people call Mesoamerica, meaning Mexico, Central America, into the Southern Cone, we have very evolved ceremonies for trauma. And for pregnant people, there are many different approaches to be able to lift some of the trauma off. And so, and that trauma changes the womb, it changes the structure, the bones, the cells, the tissue, the cellular matrix, so to speak. And so it takes a good training with elders to know which ceremony to use and that's right for that person. Some need to be gentle, and some might be stronger depending on the person and where they're at, and in what the situation. That's the other thing, birth is not. It's and traditional medicine. Our traditional medicines, we would rely on our protocol, our ceremony. It could change based on that person and the situation and the teachings that person carries. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about, but there are definitely ceremonies to help relieve people of the traumas. And when that happens, we really do change their history.
Wow, Auntie, muchas gracias para todos. Thank you so much to all the aunties and all the sisters and folks on the call. This is bringing so much healing to my heart and spirit.
Thank you, Kiana.
Thank you, Patricia. And I, so often when I talk with people and they say, that there's so much that's been lost in their nation, in their community, in their territory, that and then when I start to talk more, I'm like, but wait, the midwives might be gone, but there's so many pieces that are still there, and that you're right. This is not a unique to birth ceremony, and it very well might be a ceremony that's alive and well with your elders and with your people. And it's just, inviting that in with the very specific, piece that you're holding with birth work. And so I feel like there are so many pieces with connection to land and traditions and language and indigenous knowledge that is very strong, and that we can build midwives from there. We really can, and that we really do have so much. We do have so much, and we need to keep that just front and center. And thank you always for reminding us of that, Patricia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. So I have people waiting for me at Bumise Hut, which is just up the road. And I can see that some of our participants are dropping out because their time is done. How about you, Rhonda? Is there anything else before we go?
I don't believe so. There were a couple people with raised hands, and I also want to just hope that all of the topics that were that we ended up talking to, because we covered a lot of territory today, and a lot of different conversations that whether it's about midwifery training or nutrition and trauma and all of these different pieces, and that they're ongoing conversations. And so I invite people to, we have on the first Friday of every month, just Indigenous Birthkeeper Connection Nights, and as well as these Zoomcasts, and as well as more opportunities that will come for us to be able to share and offer support. And as I read, what one of you wrote about just, wishing that you had the grandmas and aunties that could walk with you on this traditional pathway. And I just want to say that, yes, a lot may have been lost, but there's also so much here. And that the sacrifice of going through these schools it's a choice, but it's also a sacrifice that is such a gift to your community. And so however, we can lean on each other and support each other, and how, really try and, Robin stated, just learning the art of asking, and that has to do with dollars, and that has to do with mentorship, and that has to do with plant medicine teachers. It has to do with, just having the like when you started this day of offering a song for the babies, we've wished for that at Birthkeeper gatherings of, just really wanting, to have songs that we can share as new birth is coming. And so I think that as we put those things forward, they will also just come our way.
Yes. I just read the same thing that you did, Rhonda, from a birthkeeper who's feeling like her people she doesn't have anyone, that she doesn't have grandmothers she can reach out to. But I feel like that's one of the things that we've been able to accomplish with this modern internet thing, is that we can reach out across our nations and across our tribes. We don't have to be limited by just resources within our own communities, that we can serve our communities by reaching out beyond that. And one mother's talking about dreaming of being a midwife, but she's in the middle of motherhood right now. But that is part of your education. Your children are your teachers. Nothing I learned as a mom was ever lost, and no amount of time spent in devotion to your family subtracts from your education. It adds to your birthkeeper education. So hold strong in that, family first. It's how our grandmothers did it. Hi, Linda Walling. I love you. So yeah, is there anyone else that has a question burning in their heart before we say a goodbye prayer? So Rhonda, can you close for us with a prayer?
I would love to offer a closing prayer, and I'd also love to just, and if people need to leave, that's okay, but I'd also love to just invite some of these songs that you began this day with. And so if there is anyone who would like to offer a song, or if you could share yours again because it was not recorded, would love to hear that as well. So, but I'll close with Nakla Shishokle. Thank you so much. Thank you, Creator, so much for these opportunities to come together as Indigenous people from across territories, Indigenous people from across oceans, as people who are warriors and lovers and healers, and people who are striving to serve our communities as one. Thank you for offering us more tools and more gifts and more peace, that all that we are doing is enough. Thank you for the beautiful spirit and reminders of all the ways that we can step forward into this calling. I hope for peace. I hope for healing. I hope for this virus to lose its power as we bring forth all of these plants that present themselves all around us. And I want to close today in a remembrance and a thank you for friendship and connection. Oh.
Okay, well, I am being called over to Bumisehat. So I will just quickly sing, but also remember that when we have a mother with high blood pressure, sometimes we just tap our heart with our left hand and tap her heart with our right hand, and her blood pressure will go right down if you just connect with her in that loving way. Alleluia, alleluia, wikain mo puun nakikiing ako sa iyo. So that's our little greeting alleluia song. I'm just singing part of it. And then for the Hindu people in Bali, we sing Om Bhurvua Swaha Tatsa Viturvarenyam Bhargo Deva Shadinahi Yo Yorna Prachodaya. And then our Muslim families say Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Bismillahirrahim. And so we have many prayers, also Amazing Grace, which most of us know. So we have lots of babies named Grace. And I just want to say in closing, before I leave the meeting, I love you all. And I thank you all for being here together and sharing. And let's open our borders up and embrace each other as people who have deep roots in our Mother Earth and who are blessed by Father Time and who have this incredible opportunity to serve our people right now on our earth, now more than ever. We're needed. And again, let's have each other's butts. Let's lift each other up. I love you so much. Bye-bye. I love you.